Beautiful souls, grand risings to you. Grand risings to you. It's Monday, 30th of September, 2024. It is spot on, bang on, exactly 9 a.m. British summertime. How are you? Just because they how the devil are you? And we all know what kind of trouble that gets me into. How are you? Everybody, you beautiful, glorious, fantastic, wonderful people. Crazy Bunny wants to know if you've hit the like button on the way in. Hello, all. How are you? How are you? Grand risings, healing the silence. Grand rising to you. And Odette says it's pouring in Cape Town thanks to the manipulation of the weather. I hear you, sister. I hear you. And it's not great weather here either, actually. But I hope you are all okay. No, Craig, they did not have a smoking area for kids when you were at high school. Really? Is that right? Hello, everybody. Wakey, wakey, says Stan. Hi, campers, says a non-user. Morning from soggy Belfast, says Gillian. Hey, from Sydney. How are you, Maria, darling? And George Kennelly, just done it. Just done what? What did I miss? I'm getting confused. All good, grand rising. I have a cup of Ruish Bosch. What the heck is Ruish Bosch tea? Hip shaker. Tell me. Tony is not far from me. Says it's miserable weather. Wow. Good morning from a wet and windy Norfolk, says VW Photo Booth. Great weather in Madrid, says Bijan. Thank you, Bijan. Is that just to tick us all off? Thank you all for being here. Hey, Katie! Katie has managed to get here. I was going to read out Katie's email later, which I still will. But Katie has given up her job working for the corporations. And this is her first time in the live chat, peeps. First time she's got here. Make her warmly welcome, please. Karen, is it dreary in Whitley Bay? Whitley Bay isn't that famous for beautiful sands? Can't remember if I've ever been to Whitley Bay. Grand rising from all the Freemasons at ITV. Says Simon, we have the best viewers in the entire world. It is official. And you know who says so? Me. I just want to say hello, welcome, and thank you as ever. Forgive me while I catch up with my emails this week, just in response to Hirschfelder on X saying, Sonia, is there any way you can start uploading the show onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify? I don't have the time to watch, but would love to listen when I'm driving or out with the dogs. Absolutely. It's on the to-do list. I will try and get that done this week. And also, I picked up an interesting comment, which was in relation to something I said, and I can't remember what, but it was VK Drums who said, we're living in a time where all the truth will come out. And I believe that. I actually think that is absolutely accurate and correct. I believe that we are living through greater transparency than we've ever experienced in our lifetimes. That's my position on it. And I'm sticking with it. And good morning to you all, as ever. Hello, Joanne. I did receive your photos this morning. I've yet to go through them, but I will. Joanne from Australia. And grand risings to you too, Kath and Helen. Looking forward to having a rare Monday off, hoping I get the chance to listen live as the kids are also off. Are you listening live, Helen? If not, welcome on Catch Up. And I went to the truly fantastic premiere of Protocol 7 yesterday, the Andy Wakefield. Well, I went because I was hosting the Q&A. It was fantastic. What an incredible film. It's about the 10-year legal battle regarding the unquestionable fraud that took place at Merck. And thank you to all the World Council for Health organisers, including Dr. Tess Laurie and Andrew Laurie, Fiona, the whole crew. I think I have officially the best goodie bag in the entire world. This, I haven't even had a chance to go through this properly, but some of the things that a beanie, perfect for my dog walks. Absolutely perfect. Oh, look. Radiation free headphone. I need that. Absolutely. And what's great about this bag, it actually has a pocket, which I'm confined somewhere, where I can put my mobile in and it will protect me from the radiation of my mobile. How great is that? Some great books here. We've got a detox guide, which is fantastic. Loads of pamphlets. Oh, I really should be wearing this. World Council for Health. They did such a brilliant job yesterday. Can I say? Absolutely brilliant job. Oh, what's this? This looks good. 3 books about enlightenment. Oh my God, I'm going to love this. I'm going to work through this and I will report back on that to you. But yes, the best goodie bag I think I've probably ever seen. And I was a music industry blagger. Absolutely brilliant goodie bag. Thank you to everybody. Andrew Wakefield, what a darling. What an absolute darling. I implore you to see that film. That film is so powerful. If you are even a little way uncertain about what happened regarding MMR, it is the must do. It shows how Big Pharma conspired to fraudulently fool the public. That's what it did. It's a really powerful film. The Q&A was absolutely brilliant. Andrew's mum was in the audience, and this was probably one of the most emotional moments was at the end of the Q&A. Tess Lowry gave Andrew's mum a beautiful bouquet because Andrew was in remote in Texas. His mum was in the audience. Andrew is English, comes from England, but basically has been driven out of our country by the absolute demonization of him. But so Tess gave the flowers to his mum, and like we've got Andrew on the big screen and he's starting to well up. And the thing is I'm like tiny tears. And in the moment I see him starting to well up and I'm on stage, I'm hosting and I'm starting to well up and I can feel the tears like coming into my eyes and I'm trying not to look at him, which is quite hard because I'm hosting and I'm trying to get his reaction as well. But it was so powerful because the film really is about parental instinct, knowing, and actually that the focus is on mother's instinct because it's about a mother realizing something was wrong and has to protect her babies. And I just said to Andrew's mum, thank you for bringing him into this world. I consider Andrew Wakefield not just a national treasure, an international treasure. And that man has been demonized above and beyond anything. And all he wanted to do was the best. All he wanted to do was raise awareness of what was going on. But there will come a day when he will have his moment in the sun and people will realize that he was right all that time ago before they demonized him. But it was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. And I cannot recommend the film highly enough. I absolutely can't. So we've got loads to discuss today. Loads to discuss today. We're going to be talking, obviously, about Israel, Hezbollah, about Iran, about the odd comments about what is going on at number 10, about whether Keir Starmer will even last until the end of the week, about investigators from to do with Sean Diddy Combs flying into the UK to talk to people who had met him. He's been around a lot of other celebrities in the UK. And in fact, what they recognised in the States was next to the US, the UK has been one of his biggest stomping grounds. And they're wondering if there may be some allegations of abuse that took place in the UK. So before I bring in our first guest, let me go back to the wonderful commenters. Let's see what we've got going on here. Right, peeps, let's get the likes even higher today. Smash the like button and share, says Crazy Bunny. She's in one of those moods. You don't mess with Crazy Bunny when she's in one of those moods. She's a very determined individual. She's one of those people that when she decides something's going to happen, it's going to happen. She's just like that, and I love it. And listen, Fallon Fox, we have got absolutely Russell Brand. We've got plenty to talk about Russell Brand. Anybody see him in his kecks? Because the thing, obviously, about Russell, which we'll talk about in more detail later, but the thing about Russell Brand is when he discovers something, he also wants to lead it and he also wants to monetize it. And he's going to be monetizing Jesus next. Trust me on that. That man has a God complex, but he was in his kecks in the River Thames, baptizing somebody because, of course, an absolute novice like him is ready to start baptizing. Marsh girl, what's going on? We'll have to watch later. My daughter is moving up here today and tomorrow. My son and his girlfriend are leaving to travel the world for 6 months. High emotion day. My days. That is a huge emotion you're dealing with, darling. Lots of love to you. Yes. D Studio, we have HG Tudor. If you have any questions about narcissism around about 10 o'clock when he will be joining us, please add them to the comments. Let's hear them. And never mess with an angry rabbit, says Stella in relation to Crazy Bunny. Hi, Sonia and listeners. Good morning from rainy Devon. Love your shows. Thank you, Nikki. We appreciate that so much. And I met B in the chat. She came last night. You asked Andrew a question, didn't you? And how gracious is he? I mean, after everything that man has been through, he's just such an incredibly gracious individual. Yes, Rowie, Brand and Diddy were good mates. Because also, don't forget, in one of Brand's big films, like wasn't Getting to the Greek, was it? Was it the one where he was, oh, what was it? Where he was on an island and he was a pop star. Wasn't Diddy in that? I think Diddy made an appearance in that, right? Pink Diamond fell in the Thames when she was 11. I got so sick I ended up in hospital for 2 months and I think I almost died. Uh yeah, everyone's being born again, Roby. Absolutely they are. Let's bring in our first guest. Let's get cracking with the news review because there is a lot to cover, a whole heap of stuff to cover this morning. It has been very busy, and here he is to help us cover it. Good morning, Tom Sullivan.
Good morning, Sonia. How are you?
Well, I'm great, thank you, Tom, which is more than can be said for the rest of the world, frankly. I woke up this morning to horrific headlines, and I'm so glad that you're here to help us navigate our way through them because you're somebody who understands headlines and understands that they're not always entirely accurate, right?
No, they're not. And I feel the same as you do, probably, Sonia, that, when you see when it gets overwhelming, what I like to do is because I'm as guilty as anyone of getting sucked into the minutiae and getting, taken away with kind of emotional reactions. So when it gets a bit too much, a bit overwhelming, always try and zoom out. And what I've noticed over the last year, so we're approaching the anniversary of October the 7th attack. And what I've noticed is that the our foreign policy, our conflict, whether it be Ukraine and the Middle East, but especially the Middle East, it's become woven into our kind of culture wars things in a way which I haven't really seen before, at least not for a good 10, 20 years. And the thing is, the world isn't like that. And I get attacked by kind of all sides because, on the one hand, I'm not, I don't go along with the perspective that, Israel is a completely illegal, illegitimate colonial state and it shouldn't exist. And if the Zionist regime is taken down, it's all going to be, sunshines and flowers. But on the other hand, I don't go along with the perception which is quite prevalent on the right of UK politics that Israel is a bastion of freedom and Western values in the Middle East and all its enemies are horrible terrorists and we
Right.
should support it taking them out because that's not the reality of the world. I mean, the sad fact is that in the Middle East, there are almost no good guys. And in international relations as a whole, if you look at it as in good or bad, it's very, very childlike way of looking at things. And what I would say we're lacking most of all, Sonia, is well, there's two things. One of them is a bit nerdy, just because I studied international relations. We were
I
taught
could do
to
that. We could do nerdy stuff.
Sure. So we were taught to look at the world as basically kind of in a scientific way. So there is no higher control. The world is an anarchic system. Um, that might sound a bit complicated, but what basically it means is kind of like rule of the street. When a war breaks out, there is no higher power that can go to and mediate it. Some people might say that it's the US or the United Nations,
Right.
but that isn't true. The US is just one of those power blocks. And what's happening at the moment, we can't really you know, um, we can't really detangle Ukraine and Russia, America and China, Israel and Iran, because now these are kind of aligning up. You have China and Iran and Russia on one side, and you have Israel and Ukraine and the US on the other side. So that's kind of it is helpful to look at it in a kind of a clinical, scientific, academic way. The second thing is we have no capacity for moral ambiguity anymore. We have to say that these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. And suddenly people who, I'm all for people learning more about the world and getting involved in things. But people who until 5 minutes ago, couldn't even point to half of these places on a
Right.
map and didn't
Right.
know the difference between the
Right.
Hamas and the Hezbollah are suddenly, pontificating one way or the other, Israel this and Hezbollah that. And I just think we're here on this small rainy island in Britain, and we are heavily involved, and the stuff which happens there does affect us. But I think it's helpful, you know, whatever side you lean to zoom out and try and detach yourself from the emotion, and try and remember that in the heat of the war on terror 15, 20 years ago, everything was also very black and white. Saddam was bad and Taliban were bad and we were good and war on terror.
Look where
And
that
what we
led us.
learned is that it wasn't that simple. And I think that we should have some foresight now, especially having that experience, to kind of zoom out and realize it's not that simple.
Well, I appreciate that, because that's a very unusual position to take on this issue, obviously. And I like that, because I think that we can afford to do that, because I think the world is full of too many experts who know sod all. And I think that is isn't it, though? I mean, I think that's kind of like the reality. But I am very concerned about what's going on in the Middle East. And I think we'd be daft not to be concerned, because when they've taken out, I mean, Hezbollah's like leading ruler for 3 decades, and he was loved and adored. I've seen families, right, in Iran say that they would give up their children before their supreme leader, you know, Nasrallah. And so what are your thoughts about that? Because now this morning, I mean, literally the headlines are literally stating brink of war, right? And that's why I started with, it's terrifying to wake up to that, but we also know what their game is as well. But do you think that Middle East really is on the brink? And obviously, if the Middle East is on the brink of war, then we're all going to be involved.
Well, it's funny. It reminds me, you know, there's kind of a meme which is developed on the internet, and it goes, nothing ever happens, you know, and they apply it to Iran. They say that all these threats, and they say nothing ever happens. And it reminds me of people who say, oh, you know, Putin, all this bluffing, he's never used a nuclear weapon, so we can just keep escalating the war and keep provoking them. And why don't we fire long-range missiles into the heart of Moscow? You know, he hasn't used a nuclear weapon yet, so it's probably not going to happen. It's the same thing people say that, oh, you know, Israel does this and does that, and nothing ever happens, and their enemies are all bluster, so let's keep going. I mean, I think that's a horrendous position to take, because nothing ever happens until it does, Sonia.
Yes.
And this is the thing. So I don't really take sides. I look at it from a British European perspective. So I don't have skin in the game. I don't think, oh, I'm left wing, so I support Palestine and the resistance, and I'm right wing, so I support Israel and whatever. I just look at it from, how does it benefit us? As I said, there are no real good guys. And the situation is very complicated. So the Syrian civil war, I followed very intensely. You know, it was kind of a major theme in my kind of early life as a journalist and being interested in politics, because it was a great example of the mainstream media telling us one thing and the reality being very different. And during the Syrian civil war, what you actually had was Hezbollah was on the side of the Syrian government, which in many cases were protecting some of the oldest Christian communities on earth from radical, what you would call, you know, ISIS adjacent radical terror groups. And on the other side, Israel directly and indirectly were supporting those groups. So this is the thing, when it lines up, it's very easy for people to, in our media, to play it as, you know, Israel's on our side, they're on the side of Christians, they're on the side of Western civilization. But when it doesn't line up, they kind of just ignore the fact that actually, you know, Hezbollah was on the side of civilization when it comes to the Syrian civil war. So my point is not to make a moral equivalence. It's to say that this is a very complicated, fragile region. And my position is, if I was an Israeli, Sonia, I would be livid. I would be livid at the fact that it appears that Netanyahu is basically concerned with his legacy and concerned with not being arrested for corruption when he leaves office. And we have all forgotten about Gaza. They haven't defeated Hamas in Gaza. And suddenly it's like, oh, look over there, you know, a new thing.
Absolutely. And obviously, it's not lost on any of us that, you know, as you said, the anniversary of October 7th is coming up. Did you hear any of Netanyahu's speech to the UN Assembly last week? I'm going to talk about it in more depth later on in the program. But some of it I felt was pretty horrific. It was very like a war rally cry. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And he says things like, you know, when the October the 7th attack happened, completely unprovoked. And It's not unprovoked, and it's ridiculous. But the thing is, isn't it the case though, Tom? And I think this is what's really most worrying about it. Is I get you. There is nuance here that we don't hear about, and it is often difficult to see who is good, who is bad. Are they all the same? All of those things. But isn't it the case though, for the most part, that Israel have the backing of world governments?
Well, I would point out two things, Sonia, which kind of stick in my mind for if we're zooming out and looking at the bigger picture. The first thing is when this happened, the official Israeli, when October the 7th happened, I mean to say, the official Israeli line within the first few days of this happening, they said, this is our 9/11. This is our 9/11. And I can imagine what they wanted, the emotion they wanted to convey was, remember how you guys felt when 9/11 happened. This is in terms of scale, a horrendous terror attack, which has happened to us. But the way I took it is, for me, when you say 9/11, you talk about a terror attack, which, isn't as clear cut as it was made to be out. And after many years after, we learned that there are a lot of parts of the story which don't add up. And it was used as a catalyst to set, half a dozen countries on fire and invade countries which had nothing to do with this and do a war on terror. And they used 9/11, Sonia, for years and years, for the best part of a decade. And they still do. Yeah. Even though, anyone who has, at least both eyes and ears open knows that they weren't, and they're still not telling us the full story about that. So when I heard this is our 9/11, I thought, oh, do you mean a highly likely false flag, which would then be used to bring the Middle East into chaos and make a lot of money for weapons makers,
or Israelis dancing on Brooklyn Bridge or whatever.
Well, this is what I'm saying. And the second thing is that since that 9/11 period up until now, the neocons in Washington, the military industrial complex, and the war party have had Iran on their list.
Yes.
There's a video of one of the top generals in late 2001 or 2002 rather, and he said, they told me in the Pentagon, they said, we're going to take out Syria, Iraq, Iran. It's a very famous video. Iran has been in their crosshairs for a very long time. And at the same time, that I'm not saying Iran is innocent, but it's a very complicated old civilization, and they have their legitimate grievances. Okay, there are no good and bad. Israel is not innocent in this. And if I was as I said earlier, if I was a normal Israeli citizen, and I know there are many of them because as part of my job, I talk to them. We don't really hear about the left-wing Israelis who write,
of course not,
whatever. But half of Israel, at least I would say, is vehemently opposed to Netanyahu, and they're worried about the blowback that this escalation could have on them. So I would say that, keep in mind that there are powers in this world aligned with Israel, aligned with Washington, which is a very incestuous relationship, which wants to have a war with Iran. At the same time, they're putting out things that Iran is after, Donald Trump's life, and they've been attempting to kill Trump. Again, maybe they have been, but if they have, I'm very certain that they're not the only group out there which is, trying to take down Trump for one reason or the other. So, if you zoom out, it all lines up that
it's important too, isn't it? It really is important too. Otherwise, you do get caught in this kind of perpetual idea that we're on the verge of war at any moment.
I don't want to go to war with Iran, Sonia, and I don't think that it's in our interest, and I don't think that it's in Israel's interest. And I would be very wary. What I would say to people is just remember the war on terror. Remember those 20 years, because what's happening now has so many parallels to that.
It does indeed.
It's crazy. And another thing, even though, I'm hoping for a Trump victory just because I think it will bring us back from the brink of nuclear war, I have no illusions that, Trump his team and his campaign is very connected to Israel. And part of the reason I believe why they want to, end the war in Ukraine is because they think that we need to take the war machine to China and even Iran. And they think that, we don't need to be so spread out. We need to, focus our guns whatsoever. So I think the main challenge for us now is to just step back and avoid war, because it's not necessary, Sonia. This is
No,
not clash of
no, no.
civilizations. We learned this in the war on terror, and well, we haven't learnt it. That's the problem. We just haven't learnt any lessons. And
Yeah.
I would urge everyone to take a pinch of salt,
It's a
basically.
military industrial complex we're caught in, isn't it? Where there are vested interests in wartime. I mean, that is just the reality. Like you say, they want to be able to deploy the war machine elsewhere now, and I get that. And I think that's a really important point you make there, is that we need to be able to stand back and be able to. We need a moment to breathe and look at what's going on, because some of these headlines are absolutely diabolical. They are near as damn it warmongering. That's something I'm going to talk about a bit later in the show as well, and that is about how many media heads are pure warmongers. But let us move on this review this morning, because I do want to get some feedback from you about what on earth is going on here in the UK with Starmer's government. So a lot of chaos, obviously. Rosie Duffield has resigned over the weekend, Labour MP, and Rosie probably came to prominence the most, not least meeting, I think, her married lover during lockdown. But that was all over the mainstream media. But she probably came to prominence most for standing up in the kind of gender wars, didn't she? Of being prepared to speak out about that. And she fell foul of Labour for that. But she's really kind of resigned because she just feels the whole thing is really looking horrible, stinking and corrupt due to the involvement of Lord Ali, who appears to be funding most of Labour, including their homes and including their clothes. He is literally, isn't he? He's like the political pimp, isn't he? Taking care of them all. What are your thoughts about what is taking place there, Tom?
Well, yeah, again, I would apply the kind of same framework, weirdly enough, to what's going on here as I just had, which is it's going to be very easy to be emotional on either side, especially if you're right leaning. It's going to be very tempting to go, look at this Labour corruption and look at their sleaze. And they said this about the Tories and they're just as bad and blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, I'm not super fussed about him getting design and glasses or whatever. I'm more interested to know in what is going on behind the scenes. Who is Lord Ali? Why would he do this? Well, it doesn't take a lot of research to learn that he was deeply involved in Tony Blair's government. He was made
Exactly.
a lord rather, a year after New Labour under Tony Blair came to power. He was deeply involved in that. And, it appears the only sense I can make out of it is he is the go-to guy between this new Labour government
Oh, right.
and the ancien
Like
regime of
the
Tony
Peter
Blair.
Mandelson Labour you're talking about, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, he was, his neighbor was Emily Thornberry, that's how he was introduced to Tony Blair. And he was deeply involved. He was also deeply involved in creating the kind of TV environment that
Big
we
breakfast.
know in the UK. Yeah, exactly. So, he's a man who has strong connections to Tony Blair and knows how to shape media and media coverage. So I would say, that's very interesting. The second thing is in media circles, as I'm sure you've heard, Sonia, there's a lot of talk about stories involving Starmer's private life, which have been sat on.
Let me just interject there. So
Please do.
Isabel Oakeshott made this comment, didn't she? I think on Talk Radio, whatever, where
Yeah.
she said it was about the shape of Starmer's family and not to do with his sexuality. So pick it up from there, Tom.
Well, it's funny. I still work in media, but I remember when these type of stories happen, for weeks, sometimes months at a time, people working in media will know, will know who it is and what's happened, and people will send things around on their WhatsApps. But, because no one else has broken it, everyone kind of sits back, and then it's whoever breaks it first, then they break the barrier, and then it's kind of like a pylon. But I think we have a right to know if there's something which can be used as blackmail
Yeah.
of our prime minister and he is exposed to potential corruption in that way. I mean, you're not allowed to join MI6 if you smoke weed, Sonia, or have anything that could potentially be used against you. So why are you allowed to be prime minister? Also, the whole Ali stuff, I find it hard to believe that people the media, I mean, didn't know about this before his election. So were they so desperate for him to get in, they were holding it for a rainy day? What has he done since then to, go off path to make media or people behind the media or with the power to provoke the media into lines of attack upset? The only thing I can think of, which he got very upset when Beth Rigby, who, broken clock, she's probably right once a day, I would say, but she said that Starmer, she said, I could feel his anger when I compared him to Continuity Johnson. But he is Continuity Johnson, he's Continuity Sunak, he's Continuity all of them. The only difference I can see is that he is even more bloodthirsty and more of a mad dog than even Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
He went with that moron, I hate to say it, a moron, David Lammy, to Washington to try and convince them to approve basically us, the UK and Britain, being directly involved in, long-range missile attacks on Russia, which even the Pentagon, it seems, while Lammy and Starmer were in the air flying over the Atlantic, even the Pentagon went to Biden or Biden's team, whoever runs the Biden White House, and said, yeah, we take this seriously. Don't do this. This is, we don't actually all want to get nukes and die. It's not worth it. So as we can see, with everything heating up in the Middle East, with Trump saying, I want to finish Ukraine and I'm going to, bomb all of Iran's cities and everything, maybe the wider establishment or whatever it is saying that, okay, we want to end this Ukraine thing and we want to focus on the Middle East because that's where it's all going to kick off. That's where our new kind of war is going to be. And Britain, for whatever reason, we think of ourselves as so much more powerful, Sonia, than we actually are. And, we're a bit insane. Maybe they've drunk the Kool-Aid. Maybe people are saying that. I know this is a lot of speculation, but, sometimes that's what you've got to do. You've got to speculate with what you see going on and kind of go with your gut. And my gut tells me that for whatever reason, they don't want Starmer in. I can't say who they are, but
Yeah.
I don't think this is natural. I feel like there is a push.
Oh, I
to
see.
get rid of him.
That's interesting. See, my feeling about Starmer is he looks like he's supposed to be really straight laced like an accountant or whatever. Although I know some really wild accountants, that's a whole other story. But he looks kind of straight laced, doesn't he? When they talk about the shape of the family, my immediate thought was not that he was gay, because that was actually denied, but it was the fact that he may have children that we don't know about, like a Boris Johnson. But remember when Boris was like denying, I have this child and this child and everything, and I just wondered whether Keir Starmer has had an affair. But I think you're right. He's our prime minister. We should absolutely know what makes him potentially compromisable. We need to know that. I think that is absolutely fair. And I think, Tom, when you take on public office, you have to be prepared to be absolutely transparent. You do, because otherwise you put us in jeopardy. We know that this happens all around the world, that, whether that's Mossad or whether it's MI6 or whatever, they blackmail people. They use these things.
And that's why people with, strange or compromisable, shall we say, private lives are almost always promoted to the highest echelons, because that's how they are controlled. If you look at Macron, something weird going on there. Obama, something weird going on there. It's always these people who have, rumors or something going on with them, whether it's Nancy Pelosi's husband or Lindsey Graham or whatever it is.
Whatever, Zelensky.
People, they say politics is showbiz for ugly people, but at the moment it's kind of like a tug of war, a battle almost between showbiz and politics. Who can be more corrupt? Who can be more sick and twisted? And I think, in both of those worlds, a lot of stuff is starting to come out of the woodwork. And I think the more we understand how things actually go on behind the scenes, the more we will start to understand how our world actually works, and I hope become more critical and more cynical about things and not take them at face value, whether it's at home or abroad.
I agree. Less easy to manipulation. I love that, Tom. That's a brilliant start to our show this morning. Thank you so much. We need that kind of levity, because you don't get that in media. Everybody's like, let's go to war kind of attitude. But
my very last point, Sonia, like exactly what you said, front page of the Daily Mail, Israel destroys its enemies as Middle East on the brink of war. At the same time, they're trying to gaslight you into saying this is a good thing that we should all support. But they acknowledge that we're on the brink of war.
Yes.
So
Yes,
why is that a good thing for
absolutely.
anyone, let alone for normal Israeli people as well? It can't be good, and it's not good.
Yes, absolutely. Tom, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You've got the show off to a cracking start. Everybody, this is Tom Sullivan, rather. He is a broadcast journalist and he was our reviewer for today. Take good care of
Thank you
yourself,
for
Tom.
having me, Sonia. Take care.
Absolute
Have a
pleasure.
lovely
Thanks for
show.
coming. Brilliant. Take care. Thank you. See, I love that. It's a completely different approach. And again, you know, the thing about round here is you don't have to agree with me or you don't have to agree with our guests or anything because your opinion also matters. So, talking about which, what is being said in the comments today? Um, Shug said anyone else would be sacked if they had the performance output of a politician. Shug, you know my infamous story about when I was pulled into, well, I agreed, obviously, they didn't hijack me or anything, they didn't drag me in. But when I was pulled in to do a pilot for the then Talk TV, and it was with Rachel Johnson, Jeremy Kyle, and Vanessa Feltz. Oh, and I upset all of them by talking about how lazy Boris Johnson was and having too many holidays. And it was just like they all kicked off, all three of them. And it just showed you how the people, like our politicians who were hoisted to great heights, but the people who are hoisted to great heights in media, they're all the bloody same. They are all the same. Yeah, Heppel win. Tom makes perfect sense. Rowie says, thanks, Tom. Yeah, the king has his own dirty secrets, so I doubt he will do anything, sadly. My opinion is in line with common sense, says Cameron. I agree. Don't take the chat box on face value. Hit all messages. Oh, wait, am I supposed to be doing something here? What's going on? Beyond belief. Come on now. Hit the like. Hit the like, people. Hit the like. How are we doing here today? How are you all doing? Well, there's plenty of comments. Plenty of comments, of course. Right. Let me. You know what's happening from tomorrow, right? Lovely Ed the techie on X suggests that everyone should register a chicken and overwhelm the system. Well, so starting from 1st of October tomorrow, 2024, a new law mandates that anyone, this is in the UK, that anyone keeping poultry or any other captive birds, regardless of the number, must register them with the Animal and Plant Health Agency, AFA. This requirement, including chicken registration, applies even if the birds are kept as pets. What's all that about then? What is that all about, right? You know, this all plays into the agenda, you know, oh God, we've got bird flu, all this kind of stuff, right? But Ed the techie suggested that everyone should register a chicken and overwhelm the system. Then in a week or two, tell them the chicken died and overwhelm them again. Mine will be called Clucky McBeakface. I love that. I love that a lot. But how ridiculous. Why they keep doing these things? And I think it goes back to it was what James said. Remember that email, which has resonated with so many people? What James said, I think it was on Friday, I read it out. And what James was talking about was does anybody else feel that we are being deliberately and constantly like goaded and provoked into kind of a negative action? Beyond Belief said they don't want you living on your chickens. So my dog will be upset because I don't eat chickens, but I do cook chicken for my dog because dogs don't choose to be vegan or vegetarian, oddly enough. Doesn't the royal household vet these people? Rowie asked. The chicken died of monkeypox, says MB. I do love. I've got a box of crating Easter chicks to register. Wouldn't want to get into trouble, says Julie. You'll probably need a chicken license soon. Wow, bird registration. They want to know where the food is. Great idea, everybody. Greg says we know exactly why they are doing it, that Sonia. For when there is a bird flu epidemic, they can demand all domestically reared poultry are cold. And that, I suspect, is the reason right there. Anything registered belongs to the state, says on a plane. The system broke down because people were registering their frozen chickens. Doggos. Yeah, doggos count as St. Germain. Doggos, my doggo, who's with her fabulous dog whisperer handler. And I call him, he is a handler to her because he handles her well and truly and properly. Herded into corners just like sheep, says Shug. Right, let us have a look at some news stories before we welcome in our next guest. I actually was contacted by a viewer, Rob, who may or may not join me, but he said, Sonia, I may have got this wrong, but did you say that you're kind of sort of happy to speak to, you know, members of the public, not necessarily kind of like your regular guests? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I bunged Rob a Zoom link this morning, and he may or may not join us to talk about what may or may not interest him. But we shall see. We shall absolutely see. So also hello to lovely Carrie and Pamela and beautiful Claire, who I finally got to meet last night. Met so many wonderful people. It was just actually amazing. It's really made me feel so heartened and kind of like good about life. And I'll tell you what, we're growing. When I say we, our side, because there's definitely sides in this, but we're growing. No doubt about it. Right. Sean Diddy Combs investigators have flown into the UK to launch a search for possible British victims of the music executive. And US detectives investigating, they've arrived in London. They say there are deep concerns about Combs's sphere of influence in terms of what he has been doing. Obviously, Sean Combs is currently awaiting trial at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center in New York. He's been charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, transportation to engage in prostitution. He's pleaded not guilty to all 3 counts. He was denied bail, put up a phenomenal bail. His house, his mum's house, $50 million bond, and they still said no. And it isn't just about the money, you know, and it isn't just about how bad the charges are. It's what they think he would do if he was released on bail, because he has a history, allegedly, of threatening people. And they are deeply concerned that if he's out on bail, he'll be threatening people. Don't say this, don't be this witness, don't do that. You know how it works. Anyway, his UK famous friends. So multiple. He was a guest at Elton John's white tie and tiara ball held in Windsor in 2001. In 2007, he performed at the concert for Diana at Wembley, where he was pictured with William and Harry backstage. It's not thought that William or Harry have attended any of the parties, but we shall see. He was again back in Britain in 2008 and 2010 to film and promote, that's it, Get Him to the Greek. That's what it was. And that was, he appeared in a supporting role alongside Jonah Hill and Russell Brand. He was also back in London in 2010. The list of their London dates, by the way, is far from complete because I've met him in London and it's not on this list. I met him in London. Well, the first time I met him would have been 1996. And so that was in London. So they're not going back even half far enough to really find out about his sphere of influence and whether he may have potentially been hosting those kind of parties in London. But there's more. He was in London in June 2010 rather, to launch his fashion brand, Sean John, which is after his son. Again in May 2017, and this time he came with Cassie Ventura, who later launched the civil lawsuit against him over sexual and physical abuse claims. And in fact, arguably, it is the Cassie Ventura video which these charges have followed, that because that is like proof. It's happened, seen it on video. We've all seen him attacking her very violently, very viciously, as she's trying to leave one of those so-called freak-offs, which we know is a crime scene where there's abuse happening, where they have inner sanctums. There's like layers, there's tiers to Combs's parties, or rather there were. The team of this is interesting because they'd refused to answer this before, but now they've confirmed it. Did you know that the team investigating him are the same ones who brought the case against Ghislaine Maxwell for her part in procuring girls for paedophile Jeffrey Epstein? So that's interesting. Same team. So I say that again, same team as Ghislaine Maxwell. Are we shocked? No, we're not. On Friday, Combs's lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, revealed the rapper has no plans to take a pre-plea bargain. He says he can't wait to get on the stand. I'm sure he can't. He is literally going to squeal like a pig. I think I've said that before, but he will. Almost certainly he will. What are you saying out there? What's that? They like to be inappropriate. Who should go to Ibiza? What's going on? Keep up the good work. Mockery. I saw a post on TikTok where it seems like the list is now made public, but you can never trust it when there is so much false info. I don't know what you're referring to, but it sounds interesting. What's this, Monty Mole? Is there anyone in the chat like to save a dog's life today? What's going on, Monty? Why you say that? Why do you say that? William Hale, ha ha ha. I met him in Indonesia. Will.i.am is really short. A lot of them are. A lot of them are really short, right? And I think actually, as someone who isn't particularly tall, 5'4" on a good day, on my tiptoes, and I think there is a kind of like a Napoleon, kind of hang up. I'm actually shared the birthday with Napoleon, obviously not the same year, August 15th. But I think that a lot of short people suffer with what they call the Napoleon syndrome. And I think that's interesting. And that is because what they lack in kind of, stature, they make up for in status or in being really loud or overbearing. I hope I don't do that. Wait, what's going on? The day, the dark night, Beth Rigby tells the truth will be a good day, says Max Wolf. Yeah, Beth Rigby. Ugh. Same team, same psyop. I literally have no idea what's going on in the comments, people. This is a very serious quest, been let down at the last minute. What's going on, Monty Mole? Be careful if you're offering to be giving away dogs in the comments. That's not something that we can actually do around here. It will get us all into tremendous trouble. There are avenues for things like that. Healing the silence. Sonia, the list I mentioned was about everyone who has attended Diddler's party. Oh, yeah, right. 0 heads are rolling for it. Have you noticed? Yeah. Monty Mole, if you are actually in desperate need of somebody to adopt a dog, because that's the impression I'm getting from you right here, and that is definitely X is much better for it. There are places on X. There are a lot of kind of legal issues attached to kind of offering dogs for free in a live chat. And needs a responsible owner today, says Monty Mole. Monty Mole, let's have a look at the details. What's gone on? The dog is currently in kennels, housed by the local council, but needs a responsible owner today. Monty Mole, explain to us in the chat who you are in relation to the dog and why this dog needs help and where this dog is. And at least, I tell you what I can do. I can give details of the kennels and people can contact the kennels. Give us the details of the kennels, Monty Mole. Do that, because I'm a sucker for animals, as we all know. I can't bear the thought of animals being unnecessarily put down. Fortian wants to know, will anyone be watching the Nicola Bulley documentary on Thursday night? It's one of those things where I probably will. I mean, after the event. Wait, Wayne, are you suggesting that I'm not 5'4"? 5'4", Son, you're in your heels, maybe. Wayne, I did say on my tiptoes. I'm actually 5'3 3/4, right? If you really want to split hairs about this. Yeah, Monty, where in the UK are you? Tell us, Monty. Come on. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats, says Smoke and Bones. We know what that's about, of course. Make sure the dog isn't taken into dog fighting. Katie, that's exactly the problem about this. It's problematic. Guys, if you're adopting a dog, go through the kennels or shelters. Don't take it from some guy on the street. Right. Send Sonia an email, Monty. Yeah, but I'm not accessing my emails right now. Lovely people. But it's very difficult because we don't know. We know so little about this poor little dog. We know so little. And that's what troubles me. Anyway, so as I say, the police are in London. They're looking for any potential victims of Sean Puffy Combs. But haven't we got enough people where they're in music where there are potential victims? And I say that because we're still awaiting for the outcome of the Tim Westwood inquiry by BBC. Of course, you can't trust BBC to get anything right. Look at the pig's ear they made to do with Hugh Edwards. Hugh Edwards, don't even get me started on him today. Right. What should we move on to before we welcome our next guest? I'm not sure that Rob is going to be joining us. God bless him. But if you're there, Rob, come join us. Yeah, media warmongers. I did kind of allude to this when I was talking to Tom Sullivan. And I want to talk about Alex Phillips. Alex Phillips, she's on Talk, isn't she? She's a presenter on Talk. She's a former MEP, Brexit Party. She was bawling to Andrew Gold, the podcaster, who I've also done a podcast with. She was bawling to him that she doesn't feel safe anymore, not safe on our streets anymore. Alex, my dear, you are one divisive Murdoch media stooge, if I ever heard one, because she then was tweeting, Netanyahu's speech at the UN was one of the most powerful and important speeches in history. It should be compulsory viewing for anyone joining terrorist sympathizers on pro-Palestine marches. The choice is good versus evil, peace versus terror, the blessing versus the curse. Alex, I'm the blessing, you're the curse, love. You're an awful, 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 divisive, warmongering individual. Yes, you are. I sat and listened to Netanyahu's speech. And I suspect that Alex and I were listening to two different speeches. But then she does have her head at Murdoch's anal passages, metaphorically speaking. And so I listened to Netanyahu. I literally cannot bear it. And what Tom was saying is right, is because there is a choice. You know, I mean, there is this whole idea that's good versus evil, but there is nuance in it. There are good and bad people everywhere. But none of that alters the fact, of course, that the capabilities of Israel, and with the backing of the international community, completely outweighs anything that Palestine could possibly do to defend themselves. Anyway, let's have a look at this speech, right? It starts with "speak for my country." Oh, it's like "Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen," all that stuff. And he goes, "To speak for my country, to speak for the truth." And here's the truth: Israel seeks peace. Israel yearns for peace. Israel has made peace and will make peace again. Yet we face savage enemies who seek our annihilation, and we must defend ourselves against them. And he goes on to talk about savage murderers, etc., etc. He says it's a choice we face today: a curse of Iran's unremitting aggression, or the blessing of a historic reconciliation between Arab and Jew. In the days that followed that speech, the blessing I spoke of came into sharper focus. And that was a speech that he's talking about they had previously given. And then he talks about the curse of October the 7th. And obviously we're approaching October the 7th and what happened on October the 7th. And obviously everything he has to say about October the 7th is entirely from his position. Of course, it's not going to be from anywhere else. He talks about we're experiencing war on several fronts, that whether we want to be part of the blessing, which is him, or part of the curse, which is the other side. Now, I don't know about you, but Netanyahu is an absolute filthy, disgusting warmonger. And I loathe him with a great passion. And when he says we seek peace, not at all. Absolutely not at all. This man will not accept a two-party state. He wants it all for himself and his people. He's pure. He's driven by pure greed and hatred of other people. And the whole kind of settling, colonization is utterly repugnant. It really is. It's happened by stealth over a long period of time. And he never accepts their role in this at all, of course. Anyway, this speech that Alex Phillips thought was so fabulous was obviously a huge part of it was donated. It was dedicated to Iran's aggression. And he said, if not checked, and this is exactly what Tom and I were discussing, right? Because it's this really dangerous hyperbole. He said, Iran's aggression, if not checked, will endanger every single country in the Middle East and many, many countries in the rest of the world, because Iran seeks to impose its radicalism well beyond the Middle East, right? And but apparently Israel, the Jewish state, does not. But we know that's an absolute lie, because most of our politicians in the British Parliament are paid for and bought by Zionist lobby groups. I think the vast majority are part of Friends of Israel, whether that's Conservative Friends of Israel or Labour Friends of Israel. So they're all in the pockets of Jewish Israeli lobby groups. And we can see where the balance of power is. He says on Hezbollah, enough is enough. Israel must defeat it. He says it's the quintessential terror organization in the world. It has tentacles that span all continents. And again, it's about bringing in all the international communities so we all feel that we're on the brink of war. But we're not on the brink of war. We are not in the UK on the brink of war. Does anybody disagree with that? Because I'm happy to hear alternative views. Richard says he has to keep pushing war to stay in power. War provides him with power and cover, not to mention dragging other countries into it. And that is what I agree. Don't forget the Saudis fund many things, says Camon. Beyond belief, land or peace, not both. Transparency now, says Frank. Transparency now. I went to Israel a few times and can only say they treat Arabs as animals. I mean, obviously, Randy, I get your point. But obviously, you know, again, what Tom was saying, I know lots of good Israelis who think Netanyahu is really the biggest problem that they have, and they don't want him in power. But he goes on in this never-ending speech about how the last year, and he actually described October the 7th as completely unprovoked. Completely unprovoked. How many years is it that what they've been enduring in Gaza? Completely unprovoked, you know. completely unprovoked. It's really shocking. Let me see what else he had to say. He was very angry about what had taken place at the UN because there'd been a lot of people who, prior to his speech, he wasn't going to give a speech, and he decided to because he was so angry with the attacks on Israel. He described the UN as a swamp of anti-Semitic bile. It's always the anti-Semitic description, isn't it? Always. It's like, why does it have to be anti-Semitic just because we say that, you know, Israeli government are A, B, C, or D? It doesn't have to be anti-Semitic, right? But they always go for that. And I can't remember which minister it was who said that. And she said that. She was a former Israeli minister, and she said anti-Semitism, it's a trick that they always use. He just goes on. He just keeps going on and on about Gaza and Palestine. And he said, we will win because we don't have a choice. But I have a message for you. Israel will win this battle. We will win this battle because we don't have a choice. After generations in which our people were slaughtered, remorselessly butchered, and no one raised a finger in our defense. This is such a lie. The international war community has been fully behind Israel. It's just such a lie. But what he says is we are now in a position where we can take care of this. And he says, to borrow a great poet's phrase, Israel will not go gently into that good night. We will never need to rage against the dying of the light because the torch of Israel will forever shine bright. Is that on the backs of Palestinian innocents? Right. But yeah, that is what our media is saying. Alex Phillips is saying that this is powerful speech. This is what we need more of. It's a murderous speech, which can only make me think that you, Alex Phillips, are a murderous individual, because everything in it is about destroying people. And there are so many innocents that get caught up in this. It's just very, very wrong. It's just very, very wrong. Before we welcome in our next guest, Libra is the Reaper. What's going on? He cannot wait to start a war. He literally has Diamond. He literally has the whole world on his side. But you see, he always plays the victim. This is what. Oh, I do think he's a narcissist. So it's absolutely great. We're welcoming in HG Tudor shortly. I actually think he's a narcissist because the thing about narcissists is that they constantly play the victim in these situations. Claire is in our comments. I met Claire last night. Claire Duke Wilson, lovely Claire. Got to have a hug with Claire. All the world's a stage, says Claire. We are the pawns, but those playing are firm friends. Babylon is full of iniquities, says Robin. Indeed. What else? Once war's over, he's in prison, says Cherry Cupcake. I'd like to think so, but these people just get to retire, go on the speaking circuit, continue to make an absolute fortune. Who's this Alex person? Hamish wants to know. Alex Phillips is a former member of the European Parliament, very much involved with Brexit. She's, I mean, I would actually have called her far right. I'm sure she wouldn't agree with that, but I would. But she's one of Rupert Murdoch's stooges, and she's very divisive. But the thing that irritated me is she gave this interview to Andrew Gold in which she was like, I'm so scared, like walking on the streets now because of all these kind of foreigners, these immigrants coming in who are going to harm me. That is so out of proportion with what is really happening. I saw a tweet, and the thing is that some people are just tweeting idiotic stuff. And this woman was like, I've only been in London 5 days and I've been accosted by all these men and none of them look English or British and everything. And it's like, I don't believe your tweet, mate. I don't believe it. And it had about 47,000 likes because it completely confirms what a whole load of racists want to believe. Not everybody who comes into this country is a savage. Okay, can we really get that straight? Because that is one of the most racist ideas and tropes. It's disgusting. Rowie, I hate the way Netanyahu smirks. That sort of smirk people have when they know something funny that you don't. Boris is on the speaking circuit now. He has his new book out and you can be assured it's full of lies. Isn't he going on about C-19 and lockdown and everything? Still completely supporting it, of course, in the book. Like everything was fine and hunky-dory. These people are disgusting. Camon says you won't see many English people in London. See, here's the thing. Do you live in London, Camon? Because I do. Well, I live in Teddington, southwest Greater London, and spend loads of my time in central London because for my work. And honestly, it's really much more it's much more multicultural than people would have you believe. There are plenty of white people, so don't fret. Don't fret. I will be shortly bringing in my next guest. The fact is, if they do not talk, then we have no idea who the newcomers are. Yeah, George, that I don't deny there is a problem with undocumented people coming into the country. I would stop that immediately. It's not right. It's not okay. Randy is talking about Libra. Libra is October. She is the judge holding the scales, separating the goats from the sheep. She is the fall harvest time. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love this season. I adore it. Right. How many do we have watching right now? We have 1,500 watching and we don't have many likes. Can we please have more likes, people? Oh. It's whizzing. It's whizzing. Right, let us welcome in our next guest. After HG Tudor, I want to have a look at the Thirwall Inquiry to do with Lucy Letby, which I think is very interesting. And good morning to you, wonderful Ian. Ian is one of the people who really first informed me a great deal about Lucy Letby, and I'm very grateful to him. And thank you so much for somebody with an anonymous mask donating right there in the chat. I very much appreciate that. Let's welcome in HG Tudor. And so the thing is, right, absolutely on time, because the most important thing is don't keep a narc waiting. Good morning, HG. Up any second now. Let's have a look. Asked to unmute. Anybody familiar with HG Tudor? He is here by popular demand, by viewer request. Good morning, HG.
Hello, Sonia.
How good to hear you. I said, let's make this on time, because the one thing you don't do is keep a narc waiting.
Well, that's right. That's deemed a threat to control and will result in an application of ignited fury. So I'm pleased that you've been paying attention to what I've been telling everybody.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm a follower. HG Tudor, everybody, here by popular demand. And HG, what this man does not know about narcissism, frankly, is not worth knowing. He is the creator of the fabulous Knowing the Narcissist series, which I will put a link in the description to after the live stream. HG, you are a diagnosed narcissist yourself, aren't you?
That's right, yes.
And for those who are unfamiliar, because I haven't actually talked to you on this stream, so welcome to this stream. But so for those who may not have seen you on this stream, just explain to people why you don't reveal your identity either now or in your series.
Two reasons, really. The first is being what I am is stigmatic and would actually cause problems for me what I do privately. So because I have this need for control, I don't want to reveal information which would then impact upon what I do professionally. So I want to keep those worlds separate. Furthermore, I want to create this legacy about this information, and I want people to concentrate on the information. So not necessarily a face that's
right.
doing a talking head, etc. And the fact is, by utilizing a pseudonym and not showing myself, I can be honest about the way that me and my kind behave, so people get the information that they need. So it serves my purposes in enabling me to do what I need to do professionally and separately, and it surfaces the needs of the creation of my legacy, enabling people to receive the information they need to receive. So it's a win-win.
I get you. So the leaving the legacy is in itself, that whole idea, very narcissistic, I feel, but it's also altruistic as well. This idea that you want to, which you've already done, create this body of information that people can draw on to better help them understand and navigate their way amongst other narcissists. So all narcissists are not just naturally horrible people, right?
If you were to ask most narcissists, are you a horrible person? Most of them would be horrified at the suggestion, because first of all, they wouldn't recognize that they're narcissists.
Right,
because
right.
Most narcissists don't realize that they are them. And even where there are narcissists that know what they are, it doesn't follow that they will always behave in an unpleasant way, because if we're red of tooth and claw all of the time, we'd never get any interaction. We'd never get any victims, because people would run away from us. And remember, everything that the narcissist does is self-serving. So in pursuit of what I call the prime aims, which means controlling people, drawing fuel from them. That's the lifeblood of the narcissist, people's reactions, character traits, and residual benefits. So when I create my legacy, you talk about it being altruistic. Well, it isn't, because it's self-serving. Right. I'm doing it because it allows me to control people. It allows me to nullify the threat to control posed by death, because I know I will live on through my work once this meat suit expires. So although people benefit from my work, it's self-serving with everything the narcissist does. So you will get a narcissist that will create a brilliant album, fantastic songs that people enjoy listening to. But he didn't create it solely for the enjoyment of those people. The narcissist created because, quite simply, creation of fantastic music allows that narcissist to control people through that music, provokes a reaction, which is the lifeblood of the narcissist, creates a residual benefit of making lots of money, manages a facade. The narcissist builds a tower block, which then houses businesses. Why did they do that? Same reason the prime aims. So there's lots of narcissists that do things that might be said to be good,
Right.
but it's still self-serving.
Right. So people who like virtue signal, right? Are they kind of a narcissistic persuasion?
A lot of narcissists virtue signal. Just because someone virtue signals, you can't say that person is a narcissist, because you can't make that analysis just off one thing. Right. You need to look at a range of behavior.
Yeah, it's complex, isn't it? It's complex.
Is. But what you can say is that someone who engages in habitual virtue signaling, and you've seen it again and again and again, there's a very good chance that you're dealing with a type of narcissist there.
Do you think we throw the word narcissist around too much these days?
Yes, although the understanding of it is still nowhere near as widespread as it ought to be. What tends to happen is that because of the proliferation of social media, narcissism and narcissist has become a little bit of a bandwagon. And what I've seen a lot of is that there are individuals that claim to understand something about narcissism, even claim to be narcissists themselves, and they're quite clearly not. They're just attention seekers. Because normal people like attention. They like praise. And they portray themselves as a narcissist, and they get it completely wrong. And what often happens is you get many people who turn around and say to somebody, "Oh, you're a narcissist," because that person has said something they don't like. Right, and that's not a narcissist. So it does get bandied around far too often by people who don't actually understand what it means, both in terms of labeling people as narcissists when actually they're not. They've just done something they don't like, or people talking about it when they don't actually understand what it is and portraying to be an expert about it.
And for those who aren't aware, fuel is the thing that narcissists seek, isn't it?
It is. Fuel's hugely important, as I mentioned earlier, Sonia. It's the lifeblood. So you talking to me now and asking me questions is giving me fuel, because you're giving me emotional attention. If you made me a cup of tea and said, "There you go, HG, there's a cup of Builders," that's giving me fuel. If you said, "HG, I love you," that's giving me fuel. If you said, "HG, I hate you, you're an asshole," that's giving me fuel.
Oh, right. So fuel, it doesn't matter whether it's negative or positive, right?
Well, it does to an extent. I often explain with the narcissists, love me, hate me, but never ignore me. Okay. So many narcissists prefer positive fuel, which is the adoration, which is the praise, which is the applause, which is the love. Narcissists also like negative fuel, so making you cry. That demonstrates power. Crying is negative fuel. But turning around and saying to a narcissist, "You know what? You're the absolute scum of the earth. I can't stand you. Your breath stinks. Your fashion sense is from a 1970s porn movie. I hate you." That's what's called challenge negative fuel. You're giving negative fuel. That bit's all right. But because you're criticizing the narcissist doesn't like that. Now, you get some narcissists, what I call highly provocative narcissists, and they absolutely love engaging in the provocative behaviors. So take, for example, Premiership footballer who's a narcissist. He scores a goal late on and he runs up to the home fans. He's playing for the away side, and he gives it the big un towards them, cupping the ear, gesticulating at them, and they're giving him the old wanker sign, and they're flicking the V's at him, etc. He's drinking up that negative fuel because it means he matters, and he's absolutely gorging on it. Other narcissists would hate that. Yeah,
that's key. So the point is, it means they matter, right? Yes. The attention means they matter. That's interesting. HG, I've got so many questions. Yes, it is HG Tudor, Mary. Yes, it is. Marie said you're describing her mother. Okay, HG, I've got so many questions. I'm not even sure we're going to be able to get through them all, but let's start, okay? Catherine said, "Hello, HG, watch all your videos. Can you inherit the trait of being a narc, or is it something you earn yourself when you are born?"
Hello, Catherine. Yes, you inherited very quickly. To create a narcissist, you need two things: a genetic predisposition, which will come from one or more of your parents or further back in your lineage, and you have to be exposed to a lack of control environment. So you don't just become a narcissist like that. You have to have the genetic predisposition, i.e. the capacity to become one, and then you have to be exposed to the lack of control environment, and that's what creates a narcissist.
Beyond Belief in the comments says, can you separate grandiose from vulnerable narcissism?
You can. I have my own classification system. I don't like talking about grandiose narcissist, covert narcissist, vulnerable narcissists. The reason being is it's too wide. You have vulnerable behaviors, you have grandiose behaviors, covert behaviors. For example, under my classification, a covert narcissist would cover about 7 different types of narcissists. So I prefer to talk about the behaviors. So you do have differences in them. A grandiose behavior, of course, is your typically
Russell Brand? Would Russell Brand be called a grandiose?
Yes, he would, because he grandstands. The individual who's, I've got a car like that, but mine's better, likes to sort of flex his muscles, shows off about what he does, talks about everything that he achieves. The vulnerable behaviors are more linked to, oh no, I've messed up again, and oh, nobody likes me, and oh, I've got this sore, I've got a fractured eyelash, I'm not going to be able to come into work. Those types of things. So I have videos about the vulnerable narcissist, explaining why I don't like the term, but also what all of that means. Ditto grandiose, ditto covert, and so forth. Yeah.
Got you. Crone has a question in the chat. How do narcs deal with it when they know you have sussed them out? Love that question.
That is a threat to the narcissist's control. Oof. And remember, the narcissist doesn't necessarily know what they are. All they will do is pick up on that you're not under control in the way that you were. So if you start saying to an unaware narcissist, you're a narcissist because this, and this, they won't go, oh, damn, they know what I am. How it translates for that narcissist is they're not being how I want them to be. They're not behaving themselves. They're being awkward. They're being difficult. They're being nasty, calling me names. I'm not a narcissist. But when that happens, the narcissism, which is like a background app, recognizes you're not under control. So either the narcissist will try and put you under more control with different manipulations, or may decide to basically cut losses and disengage from you by basically saying, you're like an insurgency in this country that we've invaded. It's not worth us keeping you under control. We'll jettison you and we'll go and find somebody else.
Because they're like parasites, really. They kind of like create this kind of parasitical mind state. I've talked to you about this before. I had previously been involved in narcissists throughout my life, and I know the impact they have. But I also know the impact of just pulling everything back from them, taking all energy from them. I've literally like watched people deflate in front of me when I've done that. It's a powerful tool, isn't it?
It is a parasitic lifestyle, because the narcissist can only exist in relation to that person so long as that person is giving them the control, giving them the fuel, giving them the characteristics and residual benefits. If you remove yourself from the narcissist, so you're not giving anything, then the narcissist, as you say, deflates and is forced to go elsewhere. So the narcissist can't feed off you any longer.
Anana Mouse in the chat says, HG is also a psychopath. How does that affect his narcissism?
Well, the two sit together. I'm more psychopath than narcissist. And what that means is that as a psychopath, I don't experience fear or anxiety. I'm hyper-focused. My narcissism is such that I do need fuel, but not to the same extent that a pure narcissist would. So I can spend longer periods of time away from people. One of my psychologists summed it up by saying, basically, my narcissism gets in the way of my psychopathy, because there is the necessity of needing a reaction from people. And so they sit side by side, and all psychopaths have a degree of narcissistic behavior about them. It varies on the scale, but all narcissists don't have, well, it's strictly speaking antisocial personality disorder, because there isn't actually a diagnosis of psychopathy. That's just a sort of term. It's a lot easier saying psychopath than going antisocial personality disorder repeatedly. But that's how they sit together. So there is a grandiosity associated with the psychopathy. The fact is, through my psychopathy, I need to control people. People are just a game. They're there to be exploited by me. They're there to amuse me because I get bored easily. And so my narcissism feeds into those aspects.
I mean, how do you have a relationship when you're like that?
Very easily. I'm very charming and good looking and witty and urbane and intelligent. So it's very easy to attract people to me. Anybody who's followed my work knows I've got an excellent sense of humor and, I've got a quick wit, etc. So the relationship is there for me to use. It's there for me to exploit. It's there for me to keep me from being bored. It's there for me to extract fuel from. It's there for me to control the individual. So the relationship between a narcissist and their victim is invariably a haphazard one, but some are more stable than others because you get more evolved narcissists that are better at controlling people, perhaps more with the carrot than the stick. But ultimately, it's never a happy relationship for the victim. It's because it's all about serving our purposes. So it's very easy for me to get people. I'm very good at drawing people in and making them mine and owning them. But I get bored of them, and then I play with them. And then usually I'm the one that gets rid of them.
Cast them aside when you've taken what you need from them, presumably when you found a better source of fuel as well. Do you have to have a source of fuel in place?
Not always, because I have an extensive fuel matrix. So when you're talking about a partner who's an intimate partner primary source, so a girlfriend or a wife, many narcissists need to segue from one to the other seamlessly because they don't have as large fuel matrices. Right. But somebody such as myself and others like me, I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of contacts, I know a lot of people. So there's lots of people that I can draw on. So I don't always need to be relying on an intimate partner primary source. In broad brush terms, what I call a lesser narcissist will rely on their IPPS 80, 90% of the time, mid-range, around about 60, 70%, greater or ultra, my classification, 40 to 50%. So we have other people that we can access. Other narcissists, their options are limited. So they're much more reliant on that intimate partner primary source.
Right. Yes, of course, because you get all the feedback as well from the work that you do as well. So that must be a huge source of fuel for you, because I read some of the comments. Right. I suspect you might already have answered this really to a certain degree. And that is, Kennedy says, do most narcs even realize they are narcs? Some must do, right? I mean, you realize it.
Yeah, most don't. The vast majority of narcissists don't know what they are. In a way, the narcissism is deemed it can't let the host, if you look at it that way, know what they are, because if they did, it wouldn't function properly. They'd mess it up because they'd hesitate. But there are a number of narcissists, it's much, much smaller in number, that do know what they are. But what they don't do, and this is why I use the pseudonym, is the last thing that you do as an aware narcissist is go up to somebody and go, hello, I'm an aware narcissist. Because that's what an idiot would do.
Right.
And that's why many of the narcissists that claim to be one are often not ones, because it's not something that you'd actually do, because you're transferring power. If I go into a bar and I see a pretty lady and I go, oh, hello, my name's John Smith. I'm a narcissistic psychopath. She'd shriek and throw a dirty martini on my face. I've just lost control of her. So,
yeah, it's not a great chat-up line.
No, it isn't.
It's not the best. Kennedy also wants to know whether narcissism is more prevalent in males or females, one gender or another.
It's about 50-50.
Is
it? Although there are those that will say it's more prevalent amongst males, there are different types of narcissists which are more prevalent amongst males than females. So, for instance, what I categorize as upper lesser type A and upper lesser type B. So, roughly speaking, upper lesser type A is what I call the affable arsehole. So he's like a dog with six dicks.
I know exactly the type you're talking about.
Exactly. He's completely superficial, completely unreliable. The upper lesser type B, he's bombastic, he's brash, he boasts. Trump is an example of an upper lesser type B. Andrew Tate is an example of upper lesser type B. Those narcissists, A and B, you find more men amongst those. There are women, but you find more men. What I call middle range A and middle range B, more passive aggressive, think they're nice people, but actually not. They're interfering, they're bitchy, they're gossipy, they cause problems within families, etc. You get more females amongst those.
Healing the silence is the good one. Well, I'm not sure if you're even going to want to answer, actually. What destroys the narcissist in the end? If one has gone no contact, do they end up destroying themselves?
Well, it depends what you mean by the concept of destroy. Narcissists invariably cause a problem for themselves. And I often talk about give the narcissist a rope and they'll hang themselves. Lesser and mid-range narcissists, because of collateral consequences, what they'll do is their narcissism is focused on what's happening in the moment. So take, for example, a middle lesser narcissist, he's late for work. His manager says, you're late, you're on disciplinary. So that threatens his control in that moment. What does he do? He punches his manager, puts his manager on his backside. He's gained control in that instant. What happens in the next moment? He's sacked. In the same way, the narcissist cheats and he gets found out, so his relationship ends. Or he spends a load of money impressing somebody and then he can't pay his bills. So there are a lot of narcissists that have haphazard lives because of the necessity of the focus of control. Now, no contact is what a narcissist hates, but invariably what the narcissist will do is leave you alone, but they'll go and find somebody else. And with there being 8 billion people on the planet, plenty of victims for the narcissist.
Easy enough to do, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Joanne wants to know whether you yourself have ever lost your composure.
Occasionally it has happened. Generally, I don't, because I have a very high threshold on what's called my ignited fury. And because of my psychopathy, that keeps me calm so that I approach things in a very sort of focused way. But there have been instances where there's been a significant threat to my control. And I've determined that the most appropriate thing to do was allow my heated ignited fury to be unleashed. I don't often shout, but there have been occasions when I've done so. So it's been a considered lack of composure, if you will. I deliberately allowed that to show in order to browbeat that person into submission. But ordinarily, I find it more effective to keep my temper, and basically a look or a sentence is far more chilling and effective than shouting at somebody. But sometimes the raising of the voice and letting that composure blow is effective.
I have literally so many questions. We literally could do a Q&A with you for about 4 hours, but it's not going to be possible, people. But I'm getting through as many as possible here. And I think this is more a comment than a question. And that is from Beyond Belief, is narcissists can't handle ridicule. I think there's truth there, isn't there?
It is, because ridicule is challenge fuel. So when you're ridiculing the narcissist, you're giving fuel, that bit's okay, but the narcissist must be taken seriously. The narcissist is a very important person, remember, in their own world. And if you ridicule them, the narcissist can't stand it.
Well, maybe that's why one of the viewers asked me to basically carry out an experiment with you and just say, look, you're boring me now, and get a response from you. And that would exactly be that sort of thing, wouldn't it?
Well, I know that I'm not boring, so basically I would just dismiss that comment as being unnecessarily antagonistic. And I know that you're more polite to me than that, Sonia.
Oh, I'm way more polite than that. more questions. There was a really good one here as well. Jacqueline, this is really important, actually, because you said something a few minutes ago and I thought, that's interesting. How do you distinguish? And Jacqueline's put it into words. How do you distinguish the confident or fearless person with the narcissist? Because that's true, isn't it? People who are confident and fearless, because you were talking about how you don't feel any fear. Well, a lot of the time I do things and I tend not to feel a lot of fear, but I'm hoping I'm not a narcissist. So how do you distinguish?
Well, it's important to make this distinction, because I think there's been a slight misunderstanding there. Narcissists do experience fear. It's right. The psychopath processes fear differently. So if we're just sticking to the narcissists do experience fear. So if you point a gun at a narcissist, the narcissist will be frightened of that. And in the circumstances, their narcissism will harness that fear to drive them to try and nullify that threat to control by pleading for their life or running away. Now, some narcissists come across as excessively confident, and on the face of it, don't look like they experience fear. Some narcissists play up to being fearful. The more vulnerable types, the one that use more covert behaviors, they will use fear as an advantage. Oh, don't hit me, I'm only little. So that you feel sorry for them. Other narcissists, the more grandiose and bellicose types, will want to mask that fear. Oh, I'm not scared of anything. When in actual fact, they will be. But there is the presentation, the veneer that they don't experience fear. But narcissists do. How do you distinguish between those that are people who exhibit bravery? Well, you've got to look, as I say, at a range of behaviors to look for those narcissistic indicators. Again, you can't just say, oh, right, because that person's fearless, that might mean they're a narcissist. You can't make that determination.
HG, why are there so many apparent narcissists in public life, from politics to celebrities? Are there more now than ever before? Alice wants to know.
There will be more than before because the population of the planet is increasing. There are more than before because we have more and more exposure in terms of, think about how many TV channels there are in the United Kingdom compared to back when like Channel 4 started in 1982. So there was only 4 back then. Think about social media. So you are exposed to people's behavior far more than you once were, which means that you see this type of behavior more often. But why are they in public life? Well, you're absolutely right, because that really does attract narcissists. Let's take politics, for example. As I mentioned earlier on, what is it the narcissist seeks? The prime aims: control, fuel, character traits, residual benefits. That's what the narcissist is driven towards. So if you get political power, you can control a populace, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people. Think about all the fuel, all those people chanting your name at a rally, or booing you, still fuel. Think about all the people that you meet that you can acquire all those character traits from. Think about the residual benefits, the power, the money, the networks. So politics is hugely attractive to narcissists because it caters to the prime aims on a massive scale, but also because it attracts so many of our kind, invariably, not always, but invariably, in order to survive in that environment, who's best placed to survive? The narcissists. So it becomes a viper's nest. It attracts us. And if you want to sort of survive there without being chewed up and spat out, you almost have to be one of us in order to get through it.
Wow. I mean, that's quite phenomenal, really. Cavan wants to know if you've been a narcissist from birth. So, Cavan, you're suggesting, was he born a narcissist? I think narcissists are created, aren't they, HG?
That's right, Sonia. So I wasn't born a narcissist. That aspect of me was created. Yeah.
Hard. It's quite difficult, really. Are you happy? Can narcissists be happy?
No, I don't do happiness. I experience power. Narcissists aren't content. I always have a nagging itch. It doesn't trouble me. This is the way that I'm built. Do you think a shark's bothered about swimming in the sea all the time? No, that's what he's designed to do. So I'm always designed to be playing with people, to seek the fuel. I'm very good at it. Other narcissists are less so. And they will think that they're happy because the narcissism makes them think that they're happy in order to fit in. But we don't actually do happiness. We don't do sadness either. I don't feel sad.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So neither of those kind of emotions mess with you at all. And Nanamouse says HG has helped many people navigate toxic relationships with narcissists. And that's true. I've taken a lot of information from you, which is why I like bringing you back on, because despite what you say about yourself, how you're not there to help me, not really. And it's not about leaving a legacy, but you are still helping people.
Oh,
clearly.
Absolutely. As I make it very clear, I'm very honest about what I am so that people understand what they're dealing with and also know that you're getting the right information. And I'm very clear. I'm doing this for myself, but also it benefits all of you as well. Because if you get the right information from me, which you do, you will go and tell other people about me. So that extends my legacy. You'll come back and use more of my services. You will tell me nice things, which gives me a bit of fuel. I don't need it from my audience because I'm well fueled in my private life, but I'm not going to turn it down. So it is a win-win, so that I do all of these things because they serve my purposes, but also it aids other people. There will be people who know me who will turn around and say, let's say I'm called John Smith, I'm not, and they'll go, oh, you don't want to bother with him, he's a right nasty so-and-so. But in terms of my audience on YouTube and my blog and the people I consult with, they will all have a good account of me because they've been helped and they've received brilliant information, which has brought them insight. Yeah,
exactly. But that's sort of a byproduct as opposed to your main intention. Got you.
Correct.
Crazy. Oh, this is interesting. What happens when you meet another narcissist? Do you recognize each other?
I recognize other narcissists within a number of minutes of meeting them. And they might not recognize me if they're an unaware narcissist. So unaware narcissists can spot other narcissists because they might have an understanding about narcissism. But what they tend to often do, unaware narcissists tend to label genuine victims as narcissists because of their skewed perspective. An aware narcissist would recognize me. They would know that I was one. And when that happens, it is like two sort of sharks passing one another. It isn't likely that we'll lock horns, but there's almost rather a sort of weird kind of respect that goes on. Unaware narcissists are fair game to me, and I love playing with them because I've got no loyalty to them. So I regularly have unaware narcissists that come along to my blog, that email me, and they don't realize what they are, but it's quite clear to me within a short exchange what they are. And I like to toy with those individuals. I don't toy actually with the people that come to me honestly seeking help, because they're not seeking to manipulate me. So they don't threaten my need for control.
Right.
But a narcissist comes along and they are instinctively, although they don't recognize it, trying to manipulate me, and that must be stopped.
Be asked if a narcissist knows what they are, would they ever seek therapy in order to change, improve? Can you stop being a narcissist?
No. It's like me asking you to stop breathing. It's part of what I am. A narcissist will attend therapy. Most narcissists that go are unaware, and they do so because they think they're the victim of a problem, or they might think that they've got an issue and they simply want to go to either be told that they haven't got an issue or to get some validation that they're special and they should be treated accordingly. But if an aware narcissist goes to therapy, it just makes that aware narcissist more dangerous.
Cavan has followed up his question by saying, do you know what it was that created how you are?
Yes. So my mother's a narcissist, so the genetic predisposition came from her, and I was subjected to 2 lack of control environments as a child. The first was that basically no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. It's what I call grade B syndrome. So I scored 2 goals. Why didn't you score 3? I got 80% in an examination. Why didn't I get 85%? So I climbed the hill. There was always another hill behind it. And I was physically and sexually abused. So those aspects create a lack of control environment, and my narcissism was a product of that.
See, that just makes me feel compassion towards you, as opposed to...
That's an understandable response, but I always explain to people that you ought not to, because it's a dangerous road to go down. Certainly for me, whilst I acknowledge your sentiment, I don't need it.
And there's a couple of questions here which kind of play into each other. John from Coventry is very concerned about Harry and his missus. And HG, Dawn has written in saying, I watch your videos and have learned a great deal from them. In your opinion, is Meghan Markle one of the most famous narcissists?
Thank you for watching my videos. She is. I've done a lot of videos about her because so many people are interested in her. And she is one of the most famous narcissists as a consequence of the exposure that she's got, which was purely by virtue of the fact that she happened to ensnare a dim-witted ginger prince. She has no other talent other than that.
This is interesting. So the thing is obviously lots of people seem to dislike her, and I always feel that feels a bit imbalanced, really. Right, like it feels such an extreme reaction towards her. And do you actually feel, obviously this is only our opinion, we haven't diagnosed any of these people, but do you actually feel that Harry is on the receiving end of narcissism and needs to be rescued?
I regularly explain that he's the victim of a narcissist. Harry has engaged in unpleasant behaviours himself because he has strong narcissistic traits, and the way that he's behaved is not uncommon for the victim of a narcissist. Because what happens is he's entered the awful shared fantasy with her. He has drunk the Kool-Aid. The poison has been dripped in his ear. So that has influenced his own behaviors. So there's resentment with Harry. There's defiance with Harry. There's argumentativeness with Harry. And she has been able to exploit that so that it has become exacerbated. But he's still the victim of a narcissist. There are those people that think he's a narcissist. He's not. There are those people who think, well, he's too much of a traitor, so I don't care about him. Well, you're allowed to form that view. And there are other people who still feel a bit sorry for him because he's been ensnared by a narcissist, doesn't realize that, and he does need rescuing. So people do have varying views, but the analysis is she's a narcissist, he's a victim of the narcissist.
Interesting. I'm going to let you go in a minute, but I just got to read a few more comments for you. And this is interesting. A number of people are saying thank you for disclosing about your past, because it gives people an opportunity to have more of an insight, because narcissists by their very nature, and especially one who's like so proudly so, I do that in air quotes, obviously, naturally rile people we
Yeah.
naturally feel riled by you to a certain degree, right? So it's
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
I thank you for being that open. But this is an interesting question. Vicky says, what do you mean by lack of control environment?
Okay, so there's lots of different lack of control environments. So being physically abused, I couldn't stop the physical abuse. I was a small boy. I wasn't physically strong enough. So I had no control over my environment when that was taking place. If a child is emotionally neglected, they've got no control over the loss of the emotional support. They can't do anything about it. If a child is forced to rummage through the refuse for something to eat and they're sat in a soiled nappy, they don't know how to change it. They don't have control over their environment. So there's lots of different types: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, the grade B environment, which I mentioned, a gilded environment as well. A child that's brought up with everything on a silver platter, they don't actually have the ability to make choices for themselves. They're given everything. So again, that's a different lack of control environment again. So that's what I mean, is it's an environment where the child isn't able to make, no child has complete control over their environment because they're a child. But for instance, a child can decide if it wants to play with some toys. A child is able to play with the other children. A child is able to feel safe. Those are supportive environments. A lack of control environment is where a child knows, for instance, certain behavior will result in them being shouted at. But for some children, it's a little bit like being a prisoner in a concentration camp. You don't know what the rules are. You're walking along, crack, you get hit, and you don't even know what you've done. So that, again, is a lack of control environment.
Interesting. People in the comments are wondering whether you've repeated the cycle, whether you're married and with children, and whether you've repeated the cycle of your mother.
I don't have any children. I'm not interested.
Really? Not interested in having children at all? Would it take away from you? Would it deplete from you?
Yeah, crotch goblins just get in the way. I travel a lot. I'm a very busy man. I just don't have any interest, which many people say is a blessing, and I understand them saying that.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I always find it fascinating because I think it's so important for us to understand what's going on, because when you find yourself perhaps for the first time on the receiving end of a narcissist, it can be absolutely mind-blowing because their actions often don't add up, right? They do things to provoke and goad you into action, right? So they don't often make sense. So I think it's really important to get that insight. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, HG. I do always appreciate it. Everybody, HG Tudor, I'm going to put a link to his work in the description and you can find out more. But HG and the Crotch Goblins, says Anonymous. Yeah, we love that. Thank you, says Frank.
You're welcome.
Vicky Peters says thank. Everybody's saying thank you, actually. Saying thank you to a narcissist. They're giving you more fuel, HG.
They are.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. You're helping us, whether you like it or not, mate. Take good care of yourself. God bless you. Thank you. Take care. Brilliant. I always enjoy a conversation with him. I want to get inside that mind. What is going on there? Yeah, Jacqueline, very interesting, right? Sam likes fruit. My ex said the best thing he did for me was make me infertile, and he believes that actually now, though, so do I. No. Marie said, thanks for coming on, HG. Saying Mary, what's Captain Flink saying about people dying in a war? B said, not all children from parental abuse become narcs. Some become empathic. Yeah, why is this? Also, this quote, being abused by a parent doesn't stop you loving your parent. It stops you loving yourself. Nice one, mate, says Amish. Thanks, pseudonym guy, says Beyond Belief. That was brilliant. You're welcome, Anonymous. That was brilliant, says Crone. I very much enjoy talking to him. I do. Yeah, Priscilla, exactly. Interesting but scary at the same time. Priscilla, you sent me an email, which I've got to read properly because you also sent me a video. Sorry, people, I am so behind with my emails. Please forgive me. Right. Moving on, I'm going to talk in a minute about Lucy Letby, but do you know what the anniversary is today? Because this should resonate. On this day in history, the 30th of September, 1946, to be precise, the Nuremberg trials. We know what happened at the Nuremberg trials. Obviously, after the war, the Allied powers, the United States, Great Britain, France, Soviet Union, came together to form the International Military Tribunal from 1945 to 1946. This is the day it concluded. Nazi Germany leaders stood trial for crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and conspiracy to commit any of the foregoing crimes. We need a Nuremberg too. You know that, right? Oh, Priscilla, everything you say is important, darling. I consider you important. But we do need a Nuremberg too. I absolutely believe that. Yes, I do. Right, let's talk about this Lucy Letby Thirwall inquiry. And again, thank you so much, Ian, for incredible information. And I'm part of several groups now where I pick up information on Lucy Letby. It was a very an intense catch up for me because I had not followed it that closely last year. But Ian kept on at me in the nicest possible way. He persisted towards me with kindness, and I can hack that. And thank you so many people, great people who keep me informed. And as I say, big shout out to Ian, who does sterling work around the Lucy Letby case, who Ian believes did not get a fair trial, and he is far from alone. As I say, it was Ian's polite insistence that finally made me look at the Lucy Letby case. And I asked him where we were up to with the Thirwall public inquiry, which started on the 10th of September 2024 at Liverpool Town Hall. And I think it's due to complete in around about the new year in 2025. I will correct that if I've got that wrong, but I do intend at some stage to make my way up there and attend the inquiry. Anyway, a recap. So Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and convicted of 7 attempted murders of babies. She was a neonatal nurse at the Countess of Chester Hospital in England. And there were many problems. The jury, and one of the problems, a significant problem that many people have, is how very little the trial heard in terms of Lucy Letby. So much was held back. And I have to say, she was completely failed by her defence team, who thankfully she's now sacked, got rid of. Whatever she's done, they're out the picture and she has a new defence team, which we will talk about shortly. So let's have a look at this neonatal damning report, right? This is, first of all, one of the things that the jury in the trial did not hear. That the neonatal unit had a very damning report from the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health that stated, I can't be serious. I've got somebody crawling behind me, right? And when I say somebody, I mean my daughter. And sorry, Shay, I know that was supposed to be all quiet and everything, but it wasn't. I could hear you. Sorry, daughter. She's got to get out the door. Right, let me focus, return back to this. We do need a Nuremberg too. We absolutely do, Huey. Right, let me return back to this. So obviously the Thirwall inquiry into Lucy Letby, and one of Ian's great problems is the fact that so very little was actually put forward at trial. So let's look at some of these things. This neonatal damning report for a start. And it was, as I say, from the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. It stated that staffing at the hospital was inadequate. There was insufficient senior doctor cover, poor decision making, only 2 ward rounds a week. These were incredibly vulnerable babies. Some of them were born at, less than half the term that they should have been. They had not gone full term, and some of them were just like over 20 weeks. Really very vulnerable children. How could there have been so few ward rounds? So that already is problematic. There was also the issue that we've heard that the unit itself had infections, especially found on the taps. An infection that proved fatal for babies in many other neonatal units. So that's happened elsewhere. Also, it's important to point out that that doctors around Lucy Letby were found guilty of bullying and harassing her. The jury were not told that Dr. Brewery and Dr. Jayram had been found guilty of harassment and bullying towards Lucy Letby and had been made to apologise to her by hospital management. And yet they were key to her conviction, right? Then there is no positive character testimony. As Ian points out, the jury never heard a positive character testimony for Lucy Letby by the defence. Her nursing colleagues had wanted to give testimony at court, were told by the current Chester Hospital management that they should not. Isn't that like tampering with witnesses. Isn't that interference? That feels like interference. And of course, let us not forget that the defence was an absolute failure. They never called any medical experts. The jury never heard the defence counter-argument to the prosecution's medical witnesses, as the defence literally never called any medical experts. How can you not do that? It's almost like her defence was set up to fail. Then there was the whole issue of some of this door swipe card data. Evidence presented to the jury was wrong, which we discovered in the retrial, I think, for Baby K this year. And we're also, the jury was not told the truth about the condition of the babies, which was that they were very sick. They needed to be in a better level 3 unit receiving specialist care. There is no doubt about it that there were real issues at that hospital, and by all accounts continue. Thank you, Hippie Witch, who's loving the show. I appreciate that. You're welcome, Nufus. You're absolutely welcome. Lucy Letby was the scapegoat of the failings of the NHS. Full inquiry needs to happen. Andrew, I agree with you. We currently have an inquiry, but it's an inquiry based on her being convicted of these crimes. So there are very serious questions that are hanging over this whole issue. And that is definitely over some of the people who were involved. The jury was not told the truth by the prosecution's medical so-called expert, as Ian describes him, of Dr. Dewey Evans, who told them that Lucy Letby had injected air into babies to murder them. And, top experts have come forward to state that this is opinion at a murder trial, right? Then there was the ridiculous chart. The jury was not told the truth about Lucy Letby being there when every death and incident happened. Instead, they were shown a chart with a neat row of X's showing she was. This chart is wrong and a deception, says Ian. Ian, it actually sounds like you would have been a better defence for Lucy Letby than her actual barrister. And I can say that about a lot of people who have fought this good fight, and they were demonised from the beginning. Awful. And of course, there were absolute problems with her former defence. I've referred to that throughout this. Ben Myers, KC, he made a huge mistake by accepting pre-trial that insulin had been injected. This forced Lucy Letby to accept it. But as she has maintained her innocence throughout, all she could say was, I didn't do it. Remember that kind of iconic picture now? I didn't do it. They're not interested in that, are they? They want her to have done it. They've convicted her of doing it. And let us not forget, of course, that piece in the New Yorker by Rachel Aviv and MP David Davis, of course, questioned in Parliament why it was blocked on the UK internet, called, for open justice. He's recently asked again in Parliament, why the Lucy Letby trial court transcripts cost 100k to obtain. It seems now they've now been reduced to 9k, and making it free is currently being looked into. But they often do these sort of things to, honestly, to make it difficult to get justice, I feel. David Davis, of course, is one of the very rare few MPs who has been prepared to speak up and say there is a real problem here with this conviction, with these convictions rather. And obviously, you may not have heard this, or you may, but Lucy is now appealing against the most recent conviction, which was Baby K. There was the appeal hearing is to be on Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024. No further details at the moment. And Ian says this makes an interesting story because the CPS has now admitted that they made mistakes with the door card swipe data, mixing up door entries for exits and exits for entries. These are huge mistakes when her movements are based on this card swipe information. So as Ian says, and I do agree with him, that the case is starting to collapse. Katie, are you leaving us? Katie's leaving us. This is her first time in the live stream. Got to go out. We'll watch later. Have a good week, Sonia and everyone. Great episode. Thank you, Katie. We love you. Frank is saying truth is truth. Then there's that confession note. We need to talk about the confession note. This is a biggie for many people, and actually an obstacle that many people can't get past. Her so-called confession note, I am evil, I did this. She also wrote, I have done nothing wrong. has now been shown, as Ian said, to be writings done as part of a counselling therapy that she was having from the hospital welfare office when she had been removed from her nursing duties and moved to a desk admin job. The jury in her trial and retrial was never told this. The police should never have used these notes. They didn't use them in the correct context. There's so much more that Ian tackles. He's absolutely brilliant. Faulty equipment, dodgy spreadsheets. And of course, Lucy has a new defence now, Mark MacDonald. A lot of new evidence, fresh evidence to take to the CCRC, which is absolutely hopeless, and ask them to refer it all to the Court of Appeal. And then, you know, Ian says, what can be said about the Thirwall Inquiry? No one ever saw Lucy Letby harm any babies, even though it was a small, cramped unit. The case against her is entirely hypothetical. Her guilt has not been proven beyond reasonable doubt. It's an unsafe conviction, and I have to agree with him. And so it's going to be interesting now to see whether the Thirwall Inquiry is just going to be another establishment hatchet job, or whether, wouldn't it be lovely if Lady Thirwall stepped outside of all of this, right? And she's either going to follow the initial official narrative, which is already set up to, obviously, because the terms of reference make it that, or will she actually get to the bottom of it? Wouldn't that make a pleasant change? But even if she did, what difference would it make? Because we've seen inquiries, whether that's into Iraq or Tony Blair or whatever, and nothing happens. We know they did it. We're shown the evidence and nothing changes. So, Ian, thank you so much for that absolutely brilliant research that you continue to do and be so passionate about a miscarriage of justice. Wait, it's Mickey the Monkey's birthday today, 61 today. Happy birthday. I keep one of those just by the side for these things, like my bell. Can I just say, the Philip Schofield pity party continues. He's the victim here, of course. His programme will be airing on Channel 5 tonight. I think it's a series about him being a castaway, being given a camera. We covered it, I think, on Friday's show. And he said, this annoys me. He seems to believe if it was a woman having an inappropriate relationship with a younger colleague, as he did, it would be different than two gay men. I call BS. Showbiz is a favoured ground for many gay men. We all know it, and most don't object to it. What we object to, Mr. Philip Schofield, is you lying to the public for years about your sexuality, you still not fully revealing when you met this young man and when this inappropriate relationship started, and all that questionable business as to what your brother may or may not have told you prior to him being convicted as a child abuser. These are the things that the public has questions about, Mr. Schofield. The public has many questions, and it's not about you being gay. Stop using that, right? No amount of soul searching on a desert island for a TV comeback is going to change that. No amount of it. No amount of it. Anne-Marie, I think, is in the comments. I'm not sure. Sent me about a bid to return the default speed limit in built-up areas in Wales to 30 miles per hour has been defeated in the Welsh Parliament. So Wales is currently the only country in the UK that has a 20 mile per hour speed limit as matter of course. Although that's curious because I'm pretty sure we have 20 miles per hour around here. But that's the idea. And anybody see, oh God, Lois Perry, former leader of UKIP, now modelling lingerie. I had a big clash with her on TNT. I disagree with everything she stands for. She's like an absolute extreme Zionist in my view. And some of the things that she had to say about Palestine was absolutely repugnant and reprehensible. And she stepped down from UKIP, didn't she? Staged a major, and now she staged this major career U-turn and stepped out of politics and into lingerie modelling. I saw the image on X and I was like, okay, from UKIP to OnlyFans in, you know, a matter of weeks. She stepped down from UKIP, didn't she, saying that she had pneumonia. But me and her had the mother of all clashes. So bad was it that she conveniently forgot I was her first interview when she became UKIP leader. And then she made a comment saying, I'm going to be giving my first interview as a UKIP leader. And I put a comment on X saying, oh, I can't paraphrase myself, saying something like, oh, Lois, what about me? Why did you forget me? She's like, oh, no, of course I didn't, Sonia. She didn't want people to remember it because I went for her. And I went for her. But here's the thing. I actually admired her. Honestly, the reason I admired her is so many politicians will not face me, right? They will not be asked any questions outside the box, but she was prepared to do it. And that I admire, actually. I don't like the course she's taking now. It's horrible. And I certainly am no supporter of UKIP, but I admired her for doing that. And by the way, I found this when I was moving things around the other day. Look at that. I'm voting Labour. Doesn't this say everything about the Labour that we've got, right, for government, right? A plastic bag. They're supposed to be major proponents of the green agenda, net zero, and they gave out plastic bags prior to the election. That's what they did. There's everything, doesn't it? There's absolutely everything. Yeah, she lasted like 2 days. She lasted a very short period of time. I can't remember. Oh, 34 days. Isn't that? Oh, that's shorter than Liz Truss. Liz Truss lasted 59 days. No, Mickey, Andrew Wakefield's film is not on YouTube, but you can find it online and watch it online, I believe. Who are we to judge, says Mary. You're right. Yeah, Mary, fair point. If you want to get your knockers or your knackers out, do so. Talking about which, Russell Brand, the man with the God complex, of course, has taken to baptizing people in his underpants. And he tweeted it might seem a bit soon to be baptizing people, but the apostles did it on day one, so here we are. And honestly, it says everything about Russell Brand, because what I know about Russell Brand, and I've watched him over a period of years, and I watched the way that he kind of took a lot of David Icke's ideas, but kind of reclassified them as his own. And he is an opportunist. He recognizes he's got an eye for an opportunity and how to monetize it. So next thing he'll be doing, obviously, is he will be monetizing Jesus. He will be monetizing Christianity. And now he's baptizing. And the very wonderful Peter Hyatt, statement analyst, actually tweeted about this and said Russell Brand is an excellent study in the language of NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. He sexualizes everything, and his language indicates guilt of a criminal sexual assault. This is obviously Peter's opinion. That he would cast himself as front and center using religion is unsurprising. Yeah, why did they have to appear in those tight pants? Why? What about, like, I mean, isn't religion supposed to be kind of demure, not really kind of in your face? But yes, Soul Sound, everybody's monetizing Christianity. Hamish says Russell is definitely a narcissist. Beyond Belief says Peter isn't wrong. He's not. And I want to send a lot of love out to Peter right now. He's been diagnosed with fourth stage cancer, a rare and aggressive cancer. He's had surgery. He'll be undergoing treatment. He says when his body is strong enough to endure it. And he says he's grateful for all the prayers that he's been given. And he's basically given thanks for all manner of things, including his lovely family. But Peter, I just want to say you are an absolute inspiration to me. You're a brilliant human being. And you've brought so much light into this world, Peter. Peter Hyatt's work that he did with Richard D. Hall, we're still waiting for the judgment, but the work he did with Richard D. Hall on statement analysis was groundbreaking. I don't know, Greg, actually. I don't know that. And religions are divisive. Better off without them, says Intbell. Right. And, oh, I just have to say this. Lovely Rachel on Twitter. Rachel Kleinick said, Sonia, can you look at this case, please? It's not getting nearly enough attention. I will be looking at it for the next show. And that is the case of Jacko Sullivan. As I say, I have to catch up with all my mail. One story that many people have asked me to look at is the story of missing Brit lad Jacko Sullivan, who disappeared in March this year. Police search called off for lack of funds. But we're paying 14 million plus for Madeleine McCann, who sadly is no longer here. Nothing to do with Madeleine. It's all to do with a cover-up. But they have to close down a search for somebody that they could potentially find. There you go, Rachel. She's in our comments. Lovely Rachel. And very sorry to hear that Philip Highland, a solicitor who spoke out about C19, has been fined £15,000 in order to pay $66,500 in costs for an aggressive, quote, campaign against the COVID vaccine. A tribunal ruled he acted without integrity and breached public trust. Sending you solidarity, Philip. You're a good egg. You're a good, decent person who is prepared to stand up and be counted. Right. Yes, Stephen, absolutely. So many internet grifters claim to be Christians. They do. They absolutely do. Right, we're going to end on this. Hi, Sonia. You talk about the importance of hope, but isn't hope just another way to keep people down? Interesting question. Hoping that eventually everything will turn out okay. I hope I'm wrong, Sonia. What are your thoughts? That's from Clive. Well, grand risings to you, Clive. I have to say, yesterday, the amount of people who came up to me and said grand risings was hilarious. I think I have to blame Crazy Bunny for that. Did she not introduce that after we'd received a letter from one of our viewers saying, Sonia, look into the origins of good morning? And then we ended up saying grand rises. Well, the amount of people who literally, my daughter was there and she could hear across the venue, which was packed and sold out, and it was fantastic. But literally people were walking up to me and going, Sonia, grand risings. Absolutely wonderful. I love it. So back to the importance of hope. I consider hope one of the most important sensations for a human being to have. Without hope, people give up. Hope keeps people going even in the most awful, dismal times. Hope is not inherently good or inherently bad, but it is what you do with it. If we spend our days and our lives living only in hope of something else happening, then that is hopeless, right? Hope, yes, absolutely, Clive. Hope can set us up for disappointment and defeat. Hope can hamper us from adequately preparing for negative outcomes. Hope can be like a prayer, wishing for something to happen rather than more forcefully working towards it. And hope can encourage you to forfeit your own personal control and your own personal power for something out there in the ether. But I prefer to see hope like Samuel Smiles classified it. He said, hope is like the sun, which as we journey toward it, casts a shadow of our burden behind us. I like that. Hope is more than wishful thinking for me. It's a blend of like willpower, a determination to make things happen. I don't hope, Clive, and just kind of like some miracle. I don't do that. I work towards making that hope a thing, right? So like, I'm not silly enough to think that if I have nothing in my bank account that I can automatically assume that I'm suddenly going to be a millionaire. That's daft. I have to work towards it, right? But I do believe in miracles. I do believe in miracles. Lisa's daughter is called Hope and always wanted to write a book about our journey through autism and mental health. She is an inspiration. Here's to Lisa's daughter, Hope. So I think it's important with hope to have goals and your own agency, your own willpower. And there are specific routes that you can take to meet your goals, which we often talk about here. Some people think hope is an emotion. I don't think it's an emotion. I think it's a way of thinking, a state of being, which means that it can be taught, right? It's very distinct from a wish. Hope involves taking action towards that goal. That's what it does. So I definitely, and there are benefits, Clive, to hope, right? First of all, there are physical benefits attached to hope. There was a study where they took nearly 13,000 participants and researchers found that high levels of hope also made an impact on physical health. I can believe that. And according to the findings, high hope people experience better physical health, reduced risk of all-cause mortality, fewer numbers of chronic illnesses, and a lower risk of cancer, which is interesting. I find that interesting. And then there are social benefits of hope, obviously, because it can help you develop stronger relationships if you believe there is a chance for that relationship to become stronger. So it's just some tips. Think of your goals as exciting challenges, not as like, oh God, no, I've got to do this. I've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I've got to run around a track in order to do, you know what I mean? You think of it as an exciting opportunity and expect roadblocks to realizing your hope. There will always be roadblocks. Remember that most things of value don't come easy. I think that's an important thing. Some people seem to think so. I often see people who apparently have just become famous overnight, and most people haven't. Most people, they say it takes 15 years to become famous overnight. But when people have, when they've kind of been catapulted to that fame, it doesn't last. It doesn't last. Stephen finds that meditation helps. And humor is great when you are feeling hopeless. It's really great. And it can help you through some of the most dire situations. So, Clive, on the balance of things, I do absolutely understand that there is a downside to hope, but there's also a big whacking upside. And I think it's bigger and outweighs the negativity. Ride the wave, says Humphrey. Right, people, I'm going to depart now, but I love you so much. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anna Marie, saying, I never realized how important your final thoughts are. Thank you. Thank you. I just really think that after we wade through the news and the negativity and stuff that's happening, injustices, bring it back to ourselves and what can we do? Because if we sort out ourselves, we can make a better contribution to the world. Oh, yes, we can. And thank you all. Thank you all. Yes, let's not watch that Schofield show, Deborah, right? Despair gets things done more than hope ever will, says Beyond Belief. I hear that. I hear that as well. So use it. Use despair in a productive way, right? And you're very welcome, Mickey. Enjoy your birthday, my darling. Enjoy it. And thank you, Colin. I appreciate that. And Priscilla and Kenneth. Certain hope on a firm foundation of faith, where there is righteousness in your heart, there is beauty in the character. When there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. Modry, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Jacqueline says, see you all Friday. And so say all of us. Thank you so much to my glorious, gorgeous mods as ever. Crazy Bunny and the lovely, glorious Shin. And thank you. And thank you to Shug and Merv and Randy and Greg and Cavan. Have a great week, all of you. And leave you with a quote, of course. Emily Dickinson said, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tunes without the words and never stops at all. And on that note, have a beautiful Monday. Take excellent care of yourself, people. I'll see you Friday. God bless you all. Take care. See you Friday.